Okay, welcome back from break, guys. I'm going to teach you guys this next topic of what is merit, and then we're going to talk about continued support because our course is starting to come to a little bit of a close here. Now we're in our fourth day, so you're going to need to continue support beyond this course because nobody's going to get to enlightenment in 5 days, right? You're going to need ongoing support, so I'll teach you guys about how to do that. But first, this topic of what is merit. I'll just share with you up front that what merit is it's wholesome Kamma that you generate through practicing generosity. But I'm going to teach you all the ins and outs of this, largely using the words of the Buddha so that you can understand it. Okay, so what merit is it's taking the action and frequently giving something more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return, where you're sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources, and you're doing this with the interest of the continued ongoing support of the teachings of the Buddha, where you're interested in seeing them continue in the world. Because all the things that you're experiencing with these teachings is all come from other people practicing generosity to produce merit. So what sometimes people are interested in doing is seeing the teachings of the Buddha continue because they see that they're very helpful for them and they would like to see them be available for other people. So if you're interested in ever producing what we call merit, where you're practicing the giving and sharing and helping other people to get access to the teachings, we call that merit. That when you're practicing generosity to help other people get to access to the teachings of the Buddha. The Buddha talks about practicing merit with what's called the noble community. In Pali, you'll see it referred to as the Aryan Sangha, that this is anybody who's in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment or practicing to get into one of the 4 stages of enlightenment. Because by you coming in contact with someone who's either in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment or practicing to get into one of the 4 stages of enlightenment, it's actually allowing you to cultivate wisdom to be able to understand the path to enlightenment. So I'm going to share with you guys some teachings here to be able to help you understand this in more detail. First, though, there's this graphic to help you understand what merit is, because you're going to need to practice generosity in order to train your mind to let go, eliminating craving, desire, attachment. And you can practice generosity with anybody and everybody. This is really a wonderful part of your practice to be able to practice generosity. So whenever you're practicing the giving and sharing of your time, effort, energy, and resources without any expectation of anything in return, in order to determine whether it's merit or not, you ask yourself this question: was this an offering to a teacher to support the continued sharing of the Buddha's teachings, helping others to attain enlightenment? If the answer is no, then you receive these benefits. The mind is experiencing the elimination of craving, desire, attachment in your own mind. This is helping your mind to let go, where you're living open-handedly. And it's helping to generate this wholesome results, or this wholesome Kamma, where you're eliminating selfishness from the mind. Because oftentimes when there's craving, desire, attachment in the mind, we become very selfish. We want things to be self-satisfying. We're not interested in sharing with other people. It's like, if I'm going to spend 3 hours doing this, I want this in return. And this is how the mind tends to think in the unenlightened state when it has craving, desire, attachment. But you would like to break through that and get to the point where you see this interconnectivity between all beings, and that you can share with others without wanting anything back in return, and that you're not always wanting something, that you're not pursuing selfish desires. So any kind of times that you're practicing generosity, it's producing wholesome benefits for you. I gave that example yesterday where you're holding the door for somebody going into the store. This is generosity. This is simple generosity, but it's generosity. Where maybe someone drops their wallet on the ground and you pick it up and say, "Ma'am, you dropped this," or "Sir, you dropped this," right? Any kind of things like that, that is generosity. And you need to be able to do this without any expectation of anything in return, not even a thank you. Because if you're standing there holding the door expecting a thank you, and they don't say thank you, you'll be frustrated. You'll be agitated and annoyed. And that's because it's not pure generosity. You're still having an expectation. You're wanting something in this situation. And it's not possible for every single person to practice saying thank you, because that would be permanent if that was the case. And we understand the universal truth of impermanence. So when you're practicing generosity, if this is an offering to a teacher to support the teachings of the Buddha for others to attain enlightenment, if the answer is yes, you're still getting those same benefits. That the mind is eliminating craving, desire, attachment, and it's helping to produce wholesome Kamma by eliminating selfishness. The added benefit is that it's helping other people gain access to the teachings. And that's what we refer to as merit. So this is a unique type of generosity that is producing wholesome Kamma, and we call it merit. Okay, so the Buddha describes here individuals that it would be wise to practice merit with in terms of cultivating and developing this merit. So I'll read this to you and then I'll help you to understand it further, even though it's quite clear, but sometimes people need help to understand it. An unsurpassed field of merit for the world. That's what it's titled. Monks, these 8 persons are worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of reverential salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What 8? The stream enterer, the one practicing for the realization of the fruit of stream entry, the once returner, the one practicing for the realization of the fruit of once returning, the non-returner, the one practicing for the realization of the fruit of non-returning, the Arahant, the one practicing for the realization of the fruit of Arahantship. These 8 persons, monks, are worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of reverential salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. So I'm going to pause here before I go on. What he's referring to here are the 4 stages of enlightenment. If you remember back to Monday, we talked about stream entry, once returner, non-returner, and arahant. This is the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th stage of enlightenment. And what he's saying is for anybody that's in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment, it would be wise to make them offerings. And the reason why is because it's helping that individual to continue to move in their journey towards enlightenment, and it's helping you to be able to come in contact with somebody that is in one of those 4 stages of enlightenment so you can cultivate wisdom. If you can imagine during the lifetime of the Buddha, there were countless people who were learning and practicing his teachings, but not all of them were practicing them very closely. There were some people who were wearing orange robes and shaving their heads or wearing white clothes and shaving their hair, but they weren't necessarily practicing the teachings closely. We even have this today. You can see people that are not practicing the teachings closely. I've seen ordained practitioners that are hitting animals or gambling or smoking or using drugs and intoxicants. You sometimes see on the news every once in a while, maybe somebody has abused a child or something like this. So what the Buddha teaches you is that if you're practicing to see the continuation of the teachings of the Buddha, look for someone who's practicing the teachings very closely. Someone who's in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment or practicing for one of the 4 stages of enlightenment, they would be practicing the teachings very closely. And that would be very beneficial for the world, for more and more people to be practicing the teachings closely. So if you're supporting someone in their practice, whatever they're choosing to do, you would be supporting that. So if somebody's practicing the teachings very closely, that's what your support is going to. Whereas if someone is maybe gambling or smoking or using drugs and intoxicants, if you make that person offerings, they're not practicing the teachings very closely, and now your offerings are going to that, right? So you would like any kind of support that you provide to go to something beneficial and wholesome. So the Buddha is giving you guidance on how to make sure that you accomplish that. And he goes on further here. He says, the 4 practicing the way, in the 4 established in the fruit. This is the upright community, composed in wisdom and virtuous behavior or moral conduct. So he referred to his community as the upright community or the straight community because there were other teachers during his lifetime that were teaching, and they were claiming that it was their teachings that led to enlightenment. And he knew that it was his teachings that led to enlightenment. So there were different people that were practicing different things, and it was his students that were getting closer and closer to enlightenment. So we would refer to them as the upright community or the straight community because they're composed of wisdom. They have this wisdom of how to actually get to enlightenment, and they're practicing this good, wholesome moral conduct. And then he says, for people intent on sacrifice, for living beings seeking merit, making merit that ripens in the acquisitions, what is given to the community bears great fruit. What he's talking about here is when he says making merit that ripens in the acquisitions, he's saying that basically by you practicing where you're giving and you're sharing with someone who's in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment, or practicing to get into one of the 4 stages of enlightenment, you're coming in contact with that person, you're able to cultivate wisdom, and it ripens in you acquiring one of the 4 stages of enlightenment. Because you wouldn't actually be able to get to enlightenment if you weren't interacting with people who are in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment. By learning and practicing with those those people, you'll be able to gain the wisdom of how to get to enlightenment. So that's why he's saying, if you're making gifts to these types of people, it ripens in you acquiring one of the 4 stages of enlightenment, because you're coming in contact with those types of individuals. Then he says, what is given to the community bears great fruit. What he's talking about here is that any offerings that you make to anybody, you should notice that they're using a certain portion of those offerings for themselves to be able to provide for their basic necessities like food, clothing, shelter, and medical care, things like this. But you should also notice things that are coming back to the community, because anybody who's sharing these teachings and they're accepting donations, they only need a small amount of funds to be able to support their own life. But then you should see like a meditation center, meditation cushions. You should see courses and classes and retreats available at no cost. You should see resources available to you. Not that you should expect these things or want these things from this person, but these are things that you should observe about an individual who's practicing the teachings. If they're receiving offerings from the community, there should be a certain amount of that that's coming back to the community as well. There's been situations here in Thailand where that's not the case, and Thai people take this very, very seriously. There was an individual a few years ago who was accepting donations. They were an ordained practitioner. They were purchasing, Fendi bags, Gucci sunglasses. They were riding around in a private airplane that they had chartered every once in a while. And the Thai people saw this, and they weren't very fond of this, because this is their offerings that are going to those kinds of things. So they actually went to go arrest him, and he escaped, and he went to the USA. And they issued an Interpol warrant where they asked the U.S. police to arrest him. And they ended up arresting this person in California, actually. He was in California. And they extradited him to Thailand. And they put him through the court system. He had his day in court. He was found guilty of fraud. And they sentenced him to 20 years in prison. So Thai people take this very seriously. Like if you see somebody who's sharing the teachings of the Buddha and they're accepting donations and they've got a Rolex watch and they've got, all this elaborate, expensive stuff, that means their offerings that are being shared with them aren't coming back to the community. So the way that the Buddha teaches us is that we give up our worldly life in order to share the teachings with others, because this gives me time to be able to make these presentations, to be able to teach you guys, to spend time with you personally as you guys have questions, to do all the things I need to do to really service you as an individual. And then, yes, I receive a certain amount of support in order to sustain my life, but then you should see certain things coming back to the community that are helpful for you guys to continue to grow. And here in Thailand, you don't see people who are, stacking up a bunch of money from these kinds of things, because they know Thai people take this very seriously. Where in other cultures, some people might use teachings like this in order to kind of enrich themselves. And the Buddha never taught that, and people know that. So when they see that going on, they will take action to remedy that. The Kamma will come to them because of that. So the Buddha teaches us to be able to share with the community. And by you sharing, it's going to help others get access to the things that they need. Like here in this temple, everything that you see was a donation from somebody at some point. Even the land that we're on. This land was owned by a Thai person at some point, and this person must have experienced a certain amount of benefit with the teachings of the Buddha, and they said, you know what, I'm going to donate my land to build a temple. And they donated their land. And then other people came together and decided to share resources, and they built the main building. This was like 500 years ago that this temple was built. And then slowly but surely, they've been building up the temple. It's like a community center. It's like a national resource for anybody to enter into this kind of mental health network. That's essentially what these temples are all over the country. There's over 30,000 temples in Thailand that are currently functioning. And anybody can walk into one of these temples. You can find somebody like me and you can get help. And there's no expectation of anything from you. I don't have any expectation of getting anything or wanting anything from you, but we have this national resource in Thailand, which is essentially like a mental health network that you can go into, and then you can choose to learn and grow and develop in that mental health network. Essentially, a temple is like the womb of a woman. The womb of a woman is like the perfect environment in which a human being can grow and develop. And when you enter into that womb, you can enter into it day by day like you guys are, or you can actually ordain and be there long term. Excuse me. This womb of the woman this temple is there for everybody to grow and develop and evolve into a better and better human being. Just like the womb of a woman is the ideal place for a human being to grow and develop, the temple is an ideal place for a human being to grow and develop as well. So what we've done over countless generations here in Thailand is for the last 800 to 1200 years, they've been building temples so that they can create these womb, so that people can enter into the womb and now they can learn and grow and develop. And practicing merit is to support that womb and to be able to allow other people to come in and actually learn and practice. So at one time, this room was pretty, dilapidated. It was old. It was run down. The ordained practitioner that runs this temple invited me to be able to use this classroom, and we've been refurbishing it ever since that we've been here. And at some point, I had this really old projector, and students were like, "Hey, your teachings are really helpful. We can barely see that projector that you're using. How about if we buy you a new projector?" And I was like, all right, cool. Yeah, let's buy a projector. So he bought me a projector so that now you guys can learn and you can see things better. And then at one point we had no air conditioning in here. We would be meditating and you could feel the sweat rolling under your clothes because it was really hot in here. And we decided to install air conditioning. And certain people have donated meditation cushions and carpets and different things and paying for electric and water. This is how we're able to offer these things. Nowadays, we have this term, I think it's referred to as pay it forward. If you're ever familiar with that term, where some people realize that they're benefiting from something that somebody else contributed to. And then when you're experiencing that thing, sometimes people like to make sure it's available for the next group of people. So this is what we call pay it forward, where that's what you might think about in terms of merit. So here the Buddha is describing these 8 individuals that you could practice to be able to share offerings with, and then that's going to support the teachings to come into the world for other people to benefit from. So I have some more here to help you guys. The Buddha is essentially teaching you to practice generosity to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, because this is what's going to help you get closer and closer to enlightenment by eliminating discontentedness. Because remember, the cause of discontentedness is craving, desire, attachment. So you need to train your mind to let that go. Breathing mindfulness meditation is training your mind to let go, but also generosity is as well. So that's helping you to eliminate discontentedness by practicing generosity. And remember, the Buddha was a prince destined to become a king, right? He had all the royal riches you could ever imagine. He didn't teach practicing generosity in order to enrich himself, because actually during his lifetime, he didn't even accept any gold or silver. That was the currency of the time. The only things he would accept were food, clothing, shelter, and medical care. That's it. People would offer him land, and people would offer him animals. People would offer him, even rich, elaborate fabrics, and he wouldn't accept these things. Or this rich, elaborate fabric, he actually had his student rip it up, sew it back together, and make a robe for himself, right? So he didn't accept any of these kind of monetary gifts, where nowadays we kind of have to accept financial support, because during the lifetime of the Buddha, he was living right next to his students. His students would invite him into their home, and he would live there for several weeks and sometimes months, and he would teach the people in that home, and he would teach the villagers. So he always had food, clothing, shelter, and medical care, because there was someone right there to provide it for him. But nowadays, we don't spend that kind of time with our students. So students do sometimes offer financial support to be able to pay for things like water and electric and things like this. But the Buddha didn't teach generosity because he was trying to enrich himself. He taught it because he understood that that's what led to his enlightenment. And in order for you to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to practice a certain amount of generosity too. When you see the words of the Buddha on this, he talks about eliminating the stain of selfishness. This is how he describes it, that in the unenlightened state, we tend to be somewhat selfish, and we need to eliminate that stain or that pollution where we're willing to give and share with other people. And as you're learning and practicing, and you're starting to see the improvement to the condition of your mind, and you're noticing that these teachings are absolutely working to help you experience more peace and more joy, and you're eliminating more and more doubt about these teachings, that might be the time that you decide that you would like to start supporting the teachings for other people, because because you're starting to see and observe the improvement to the quality of your mind and your life. And this is one of the things that you're going to need to eliminate is the doubt about the teachings, right? And you don't eliminate doubt about the teachings of the Buddha through belief or faith or anything like that. You eliminate your doubt through investigating his teachings and examining his teachings. And then as you're practicing those teachings, you can see the improvement to the condition of your mind. And as you're eliminating this doubt and you see more and more improvement to your life and to your mind, this might be a time where you decide to start helping other people get access to the teachings. There's a misunderstanding throughout the Buddhist world about merit, and it's here in Thailand and it's in other places too that you might see. So when you go out and about and you might be making offerings to people, sometimes what ordained practitioners will do is they will suggest to you to get this little urn of water and this little bowl. They usually have it nearby, and they will gesture to you to go get it. And then after you make your offering, they will have you pour out this water as they're chanting. And what they're thinking is that whatever merit, whatever benefit that you've created, you're now transferring that to somebody else, like to a dead relative or to somebody else. You're transferring the benefits of your merit to somebody else. While this is a wonderful thought, it's not actually possible. It's not possible to transfer your good deeds to somebody else. It's kind of like mom or dad. Maybe they've done all kinds of unwise things. Maybe they were even drinking alcohol and addicted to drugs all throughout their life. And now maybe they've died. And now the children think like, oh, let's go make some offerings at the temple and let's transfer this benefit to mom and dad. Well, if you understand what's going on with the benefit of generosity in producing merit, which is the improvement to the condition of your mind, where you're eliminating craving, desire, attachment, you can't transfer that to somebody else. And if you think back to the discussion we just had about the natural law of Kamma, you saw where the Buddha said you are the owner and the heir of your Kamma. Other people can't produce Kamma for you. So this is a misunderstanding where they're doing a rite, a ritual, a ceremony, or worship in order to create some kind of benefit. You can't pour out water and transfer your benefit of what you've done to somebody else. It's just not possible. Anytime that somebody needs to eliminate the craving, desire, attachment in their mind, they're going to need to be able to do that through their own decisions and their own actions. So you might see this at temples, you might see this in various Buddhist centers where they're pouring out this water, doing some kind of rite, ritual, or ceremony, and you just can know that that's not what the Buddha actually taught, even though those people might be doing that particular thing. Here's some guidance from the Buddha if you decide you would ever like to make an offering, of how to make an offering. He's talking to a female here because a female is the one who asked him the question. So he's using the pronoun she, but you could apply any pronoun that you'd like here. Essentially what he's talking about is purification of an offering. He said there's essentially 6 things that you would like to be able to do. 3 things for the donor and 3 things for the recipient to make sure that this offer is somewhat so that it's beneficial or purified. He says that the donor should be joyful before giving, and that the donor should be calm and confident in the act of giving. And then after giving, the donor should also be joyful. Essentially what he's teaching you here is how to protect your mind when you're making an offering, that you think through your offering and decide whether or not this is something that you would like to offer. Because if you get to the end of your offering and you have remorse, like, oh my goodness, I gave too much, I don't have what I need now for myself. Like, wow, I gave too much. Or if you get to the end of your offering and like, wow, I'm really selfish. I should have gave more. I could have gave more. Why didn't I give more? Then your mind isn't joyful at the end of your offering. So the Buddha is teaching you that before you make an offering, be sure your mind's joyful, that you've thought through your offering and you know, like, yes, this is a wonderful offering that I'd like to make. And then when you're making your offering to somebody, that you're calm and confident when you're making your offering. And then afterwards, you're still joyful. So he's helping you to see how to protect your mind so that you don't experience remorse. Then for the person that you're giving the offering to, he says that this individual should be free of craving, anger, and ignorance, which means they're actually enlightened. If someone's free of craving, anger, and ignorance, their mind is enlightened. or they're practicing for the removal of craving, anger, and ignorance. This means that they're maybe close to enlightenment. Because remember, the Buddha is guiding you to practice merit and practice generosity with people who are practicing the teachings closely. If someone's not practicing the teachings closely, it would be unwise to actually support that. So here the Buddha is talking about craving, anger, and ignorance. And if you know what these things are and you know how to identify them in somebody else, then this can be helpful for you. But there's other parts of his teachings where he gives you some more simple advice, and I'll give you that advice that he shares. He basically shares that when you're first getting started like this, you're not going to necessarily be able to identify craving, anger, and ignorance in someone else's mind. So he suggests that what you do is you look for the clarity of someone's mind, that they should be able to speak clear, they should be concise, they should be focused, they should be able to understand the teachings very easily and be able to explain them very easily. Because if your mind has pollution in your mind, you're going to have what's called a muddled mind. This is what the Buddha describes it as, a muddled mind, where your mind's lacking focus, you're lacking concentration, you're lacking clarity. So someone who's not practicing the teachings very closely, their mind will be very muddled and confused, and they'll have difficulties explaining the teachings. But someone who's practicing the teachings very closely, they will understand them very well, and they will have removed the pollutions out of their mind, so they will be able to speak very clear and very concise about the teachings of the Buddha. And this is how the Buddha describes that it would be wise for you to look for that type of individual, because you'll know that they're actually practicing the teachings closely. More deeply, you would like to look for craving, anger, and ignorance, but you might not know how to do that at this point in your journey. So you can look at the person's quality of mind. You're not doing this in a judgmental way. You're not looking down on the person and judging them as being good or bad or anything like that. That's not what the Buddha is teaching you. He's teaching you to make wise decisions about where you send your resources to be able to help the teachings flourish in the world. So you're not looking down on this person. So like when I've been to temples and I've seen ordained practitioners smoking or hitting dogs or gambling or something like this, I don't look down on them and think negatively of them. I just realize that that's where they're at in their practice. And at one time, I did those same things too. I used to gamble. I used to smoke cigarettes. I used to drink alcohol and use drugs. I used to hit animals sometimes. I used to even kill animals. I worked at a farm, right? We used to do those kinds of things. So I can't judge other people and look down on them, because these are the exact same things that I used to do too. So it would be unwise to look down on somebody. They're just at a different place in their practice than maybe you are at this point. So you can just look at an individual's mind to determine whether their mind is clear and focused and concentrated. Do they understand the teachings very well? Are they guiding you to improved conditions of mind? And these are the types of individuals that the Buddha suggests that you support and that you look to share offerings with. There's something that the Buddha teaches that is called the way of practice. This is going to be really helpful for you from this class and beyond. That all those things that I taught about the Eightfold Path and all the other things that I taught you, there's a lot of details there in the teachings of the Buddha. And sometimes as you're first getting started, you need something very simple and very straightforward to get started. And even as you get going, this thing called the way of practice is actually really helpful for you. What this is the Buddha is explaining to you, what can you be doing on a day-to-day basis every single day in order to make your way closer to enlightenment? What are 3 things that you could be doing every single day in order to get closer and closer to enlightenment? And what he teaches is to practice generosity, that this is one of the things that you should practice daily. You should practice moral conduct, where you're improving your moral conduct, and you're practicing meditation. These are the 3 things that you're like to do every day. Now remember, generosity is the giving and sharing of more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return. And you can practice generosity with anybody and everybody. When you're practicing generosity with the continuation of the teachings of the Buddha, that's merit. Right? But this generosity, you're going to need to practice this in order to train your mind to let go. And what you're going to notice is frequency is more important than the amount. Just like meditation. When I taught you guys meditation, I said frequency is more important than the duration. The same thing is true about generosity, that you need to frequently practice generosity. So say, for example, if I'm attached to money and I would like to start practicing generosity to give away money, well, if I gave away $500 once a year, that's not going to be as impactful as if I give away $1 every day. If I give away $1 every day, my mind has to let go multiple times throughout the year. And I'm training my mind to let go. So you would like to create frequency with your offerings. So that's why, like, if you go around Thailand, you'll see donation boxes in a lot of places. And people will just put 10 baht, 10 baht, or 20 baht, 20 baht. And throughout their day, they might have given away, 100 baht or 150 baht, which is like $3 or $4. But every single time they did this, maybe 5 or 10 times during their day, they had to give. They gave. And this trained their mind to let go. So same thing, like maybe say you're attached to your clothing, right? Maybe your clothes come out of the washing machine and the dryer and they're ripped and torn. And maybe you notice you're frustrated and you're angry. This shows that you're attached to your clothing. So maybe you should give away some of your clothing. Or maybe you have certain jewelry that you find that you're holding on to. Maybe you need to share it with other people. You don't necessarily have to give it away, but maybe you let other people wear it for a couple of weeks. And this will help your mind to let go of this. So when you're practicing generosity, it's training your mind to let go of these things that your mind's holding on to. And your mind can hold on to, yes, money, but also clothing and jewelry, even your house. Some people, you might feel very uncomfortable to share your house with somebody else. This is one of the reasons why people used to invite the Buddha to come live with them for a period of time, because they're sharing their house and they're practicing generosity with that. Or like, say, food. Here in Asia, we tend to put food in the middle and we share food. And now as we eat, everybody takes 2 or 3 scoops of food and they put it on their plate, and then they eat those 2 or 3 scoops of food. And then you take another 2 or 3 scoops and you put that on your plate and you eat that. So now if you have a family of 4 or 6 people, at the end of the meal, everybody might not be full, but everybody got a little bit of food and we were able to share it. Because here in Asia, some people don't have food to fill up their stomach, but they have enough food that everybody can eat a little bit and kind of get a little bit of food, and now we've all shared. Where in the West, we tend to kind of hoard our food and we kind of put it all on our plate, and it's like mine. So if you're in a situation where you can share food, this is actually really helpful for you. Like, say you have a bag of chips and you open up the bag of chips and there's a bunch of friends there. Send the bag around. If it comes back and there's only 1 chip left in the bag, okay, just go get another bag, right? But it's nice to share with other people, and this will help you to practice generosity. So if you're frequently doing this, or you're practicing generosity, this will train your mind to let go. The second thing the Buddha is teaching here is to improve your moral conduct. This is your right speech, right action, and right livelihood. As long as you're practicing unwholesome moral conduct, you're putting more and more harm out into the world, and this harm is going to come back to you. So he teaches you to clean up your moral conduct. What the Buddha would teach first is he would teach the Four Noble Truths, helping you establish right view. Then he would teach you moral conduct right away. Because as long as you're putting out harmful things in your moral conduct, this is all going to come back to you. So it's kind of like if you had a pipe that busted and there was water spewing all over the place. The first thing you're going to do is not go clean up the mess on the floor. The first thing you're going to do is try to stop the pipe from leaking, right? So it's the same kind of thing. If you're interested in cleaning up your Kamma, like we were talking about earlier, the first thing you got to do is shut down the pipe. Stop it spewing all over the room, right? So that's what you would like to do, is clean up your moral conduct. And the right speech, right action, right livelihood is going to help you to do that from the Eightfold Path. Then what's helping you with all of this is the meditation. Frequency is more important than duration. But these are all things that you would be doing on a daily basis. We taught meditation as part of this course. So if every day you're looking to practice generosity in multiple ways, you're cleaning up your moral conduct, and you're improving your meditation and building that up, you're actively working towards enlightenment. There's other things you're going to need, but this is like a really simple approach to be able to look at the 3 individual things that you can be doing to make your way towards enlightenment. Okay, so I'm going to pause here, see what questions you guys have before we move on further. Let me see if you guys have questions here. Looks like Roxanne has a question. Or if anyone online, if you guys have questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or raise your hand in Zoom. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, where he is talking about merit. Mm-hmm. And it seems to me that he's talking about household practitioners, mm-hmm. or 2 household practitioners, more about people who are within the Sangha, because this is like, it's proximal. So you have the ability to see and be around a large group of people who are either practicing well or not practicing well.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yeah, but the word sangha, it means community.
Right.
Sometimes people think it's just the ordained practitioners. So it's everybody. You're
Right.
a part of the sangha, right? So if you're in a community and you would like to practice and develop merit, you can make offerings to people who are in one of these 4 stages of enlightenment or practicing for one of the 4 stages. And that's what's going to help you, because now you come in contact with that person to be able to learn from that individual.
Right, right. Mm-hmm. And I mean, even though we have a wonderful community here and a wonderful sense of community, mm-hmm. as most of us are traveling or are travelers, then when we're outside of this community, it's not, I kind of feel like it's not that likely that I'm going to encounter people in the different stages of enlightenment to support.
I see. Yeah, so it's oftentimes what someone has is they have like a center like this where they're actively learning and they know that the teachings are being shared really well and they're interested in supporting that. And even as they travel, they might do things to support the work that we do here. So like I have people that sometimes help me with podcast editing, or they will share posts online about classes that I'm teaching, or some people provide financial support. There's a way to be able to send that in through like PayPal or Venmo or Wise or things like that. So people will support the things that we're doing here, even though they're traveling around. And that's one way to continue to produce merit, even when you're traveling.
Right. So in general, day to day, I think it was the slide before that, it doesn't matter. In just practicing generosity on a regular basis, that is not the same as creating merit. No.
So you can practice generosity on a day-to-day basis, and you're going to need to do that. So like, like the other day we went to lunch, mm-hmm. and you bought an appetizer, mm-hmm. and you shared it with everybody.
Right.
That's generosity, right? When you're sharing it with a teacher or a center like this that's continuing the teachings of the Buddha, that's merit. So in that situation, you were practicing generosity with your fellow community members, and then you were also sharing with the teacher to be able to sustain that person's life, to be able to then produce merit. So we refer to these two things differently. So even let's just say you bought some food for the dogs, and you fed the dogs outside. That's generosity. That's helping you.
But it's not merit.
It's not merit because it's not helping the continuation of the teachings of the Buddha. But both of these things are important, and you're going to need to generate both of them in order to be able to get to enlightenment, because you're going to need to practice generosity with various people in the world, and then you're going to need to have some amount of generosity for the continued teachings, sharing of the teachings of the Buddha. And then that's up to you to decide if you would like to do that kind of thing.
Right. And so as we just move about. I mean, there's literally thousands of temples that we could walk into, sit in, discover. How would we ever know if someone who was a teacher or a practitioner or a monk or whatever in that particular temple was in any of the stages of enlightenment?
That's where typically you're going to have a relationship with somebody,
right?
And you're going to be actively learning the teachings, and you're going to know that person. You will have gone into those temples. You would have found somebody at some point that you felt was either enlightened or close to it, and now you're actively learning with that person, and now you're supporting that individual's efforts to share the teachings by making generous offerings of time, effort, energy, and resources.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let me see if we have any questions anywhere else. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere else. So I've got more here for you from the Buddha to be able to help you guys understand this. This is a teaching from the Buddha that was very impactful the first time I read it. So I usually share it with people when I'm talking about generosity or merit. This one is titled, If Beings Knew the Results of Giving and Sharing. Monks, if beings knew, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they would not eat without having given, nor would the stain of selfishness obsess them and take root in their minds. Even if it were their last bite, their last mouthful, they would not eat without having shared it, if there were someone to share it with. But because beings do not know, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they eat without having given, and the stain of selfishness obsesses them and takes root in their minds. So what the Buddha is saying here about the results of giving and sharing, the results of giving and sharing is enlightenment. This is the elimination of craving, desire, attachment. And getting to enlightenment, the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. You no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of these feelings and others are completely eliminated. And he knows what that mental state is, and he knows that generosity is part of what helped him to be able to attain that. So what he's saying is if beings knew, as I know, the quality of mind of the enlightened mind and how peaceful and joyful it really is, and that it's generosity that leads to this mental state, they wouldn't eat without having shared it if there was someone to share it with. Because if this generosity is what's going to help you to produce that mental state, and you knew how peaceful that mental state is, there'd never be a situation where you're disinterested in sharing. You'd always be willing to share. But because beings do not know about this peaceful and joyful mental state, and that it's generosity that leads to it, they eat without having shared it, and this selfishness obsesses the mind. So that's what the Buddha is helping you to see here. Right? So we can share our food. This is a really big one that the mind tends to hoard, because I haven't shared this with you guys yet, but a lot of human beings, we're being reborn out of the animal realm, and we maintain our consciousness from the animal existences. We tend to function very much like animals. We're not animals. We're human beings. Some people think that we're animals, but we're not. We're human beings, and we can evolve to a higher and higher consciousness. It's kind of like an evolution of our species. But when we're reborn into the world and we're in the unenlightened state, we function very much like an animal. And if you look at animals, they tend to hoard food, right? And this is sometimes what we do in the human state too. But what you would like to do is live open-handedly and share with the people around you. And this is going to help you to become more and more evolved as a human being. That hoarding food is something that an animal would do. But we're not animals. We're human beings. And we can become a better and better human being. That's what the path to enlightenment is all about. So here's some more from the Buddha. It's titled 5 Benefits of Giving. Monks, there are these 5 benefits of giving. What 5? 1 is dear and agreeable to many people. Wholesome persons go in large numbers to 1. 1 acquires a wholesome reputation. 1 is not deficient in the householder's duties. With the breakup of the body after death, 1 is reborn in a good destination, in a heavenly world. These are the 5 benefits of giving. By giving, 1 becomes dear. 1 follows the duty of the wholesome. The wholesome, mentally disciplined monks always go in large numbers to 1. They teach 1 the teachings that dispels all discontentedness, having understood which, the taintless 1 here attains nibbana, or enlightenment. So I share this teaching so you can see what he talks about with these 5 benefits. These aren't things that you should expect or want, but he's helping you see this cause and effect. Because when you start practicing generosity and you start experiencing some of these things, you can see like, this is the Kamma from practicing generosity. But you're not interested in wanting or longing, yearning for these things, because then it wouldn't be actual pure generosity if you were expecting these things. But then the other reason why I like to share this with you is to really hone in on number 5, because all the rest of them are pretty self-explanatory, but here you see him talking about this rebirth in the heavenly world. This isn't the ultimate goal of the teachings of the Buddha. The ultimate goal is to get to enlightenment and escape this continuous cycle of rebirth. Being reborn in the heavenly realm, this is not the ideal existence. Those beings are experiencing exclusively pleasant feelings, and they tend to be somewhat complacent. They're still in the cycle of rebirth, and they need to get to enlightenment. It's not a permanent existence, because you can see the universal truth of impermanence, that everything around you is constantly changing. So while you might have been taught that the heavenly realm is permanent, you can see through the universal truth of impermanence that it's not permanent, that those beings are being reborn in and out of that particular realm. So in the heavenly realm, with those beings being complacent, only experiencing exclusively pleasant feelings, they tend to not learn and practice to be able to train their mind to get to enlightenment. So they're oftentimes reborn into the other realms. But that's not the ultimate goal of the teachings of the Buddha, to get to heaven. The ultimate goal is to get to enlightenment here and escape all of this continuous cycle of rebirth. But the same things that lead to rebirth in the heavenly world are the same things that lead to enlightenment as well. So if you're practicing generosity and you actually get to enlightenment, wonderful. That's what you would like to be able to do. But if for some reason you fall short of that, there's the potential to be reborn in the heavenly world. That's why the Buddha is sharing this. He's not sharing this in order for you to aspire to be reborn in the heavenly world. He's just helping you to understand that, hey, this generosity that you're practicing, yeah, it leads to enlightenment. That's the ultimate goal. But if you fall short of that for any reason, there's this potential to be reborn into the heavenly world. But that shouldn't be what your goal is. Your goal should be to get to enlightenment. So you'll see this when the Buddha talks about generosity sometimes, that he puts this one in there because it's true. And then the students need to be able to know that. He's showing you this cause and effect, or this action and result, to be able to see the results of giving and sharing. And one of those results is the potential to be reborn in the heavenly world. But that's not the ultimate goal. Okay? So this is one of the things you'll see from the Buddha. Here's another teaching from the Buddha. Giving of teachings is superior than gifts of material things. Monks, there are these two kinds of gifts, a gift of material things and a gift of the teachings. Of these two kinds of gifts, this is supreme, a gift of the teachings. There are these two kinds of sharing, sharing of material things and sharing of the teachings. Of these two kinds of sharing, this is supreme, sharing of the teachings. Of these two kinds of assistance, assistance with material things and assistance with the teachings. Of these two kinds of assistance, this is supreme, assistance with the teachings. What he's saying is giving the gift of the teachings is the very best gift you could ever give, right? Because we can give people, say, a brand new car, a brand new house. We can give them clothes and jewelry and other presents like this. But all this stuff is impermanent. It's going to come and go. It's going to arise. It's going to change. It's going to fade away. But giving the gift of being able to eliminate your anger and your sadness and your frustration, this is a permanent mental state. If I asked you guys, press this button, and your parents and your family members would stay angry and bitter and hostile and harsh for the rest of their life, and so will you. Or you can press this button and you guys will all get to peace and joy for the rest of your life. Which button would you press? A or B? B, right? Of course, you would like to press that button, right? But unfortunately, it's not a button. We can't press a button. It's learning and practicing and developing and training the mind. And the teachings need to be available in order to accomplish that. So right now, you might not be in a position to be able to share the teachings like a teacher would do. And this is one of the reasons why I do share the teachings, because it's the best gift I could ever give to you, is to teach you how to eliminate your anger and your sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings. But one of the things that students can do is they can support the teachings to be shared with other people. So that's one of the ways that you can give the gift of the teachings to other people, is by making them available for others. And then lastly, this last teaching that I'll share with you guys that helps you to understand how the Buddha set things up from his lifetime. He's going to talk here about mutual support between monks, Brahmins, and householders. Let me first explain to you what a Brahmin is. A Brahmin nowadays, we might refer to this person as a Hindu priest. That during the lifetime of the Buddha, the people were convinced that they couldn't improve their life. This wasn't from the Buddha. This was before the Buddha. People were convinced that in order to experience something better in their life, they had to go to this Brahmin And Brahmin were born into a family. It was 15% of society. It was a caste system. And these 15% of society were taught that they were holy people and that they could do rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship. And the other 85% of the people would come and pay the Brahmin. And now they would do rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. And you were supposed to go home and your life was going to get better. Right? So if you were sick or you were having problems in your career or your children or your husband or wife was having challenges, you guys were having difficulties in your relationships, you would go to the Brahmin, you would pay them some money, they would do a rite, ritual, ceremony, and worship, and you were supposed to go home and life was going to magically get better. Right? Well, the Buddha knew that this wasn't true. This isn't the way life works. And this actually bred a lot of corruption because people would come to the Brahmin and they would pay, say, $5 for a ceremony today. And then tomorrow they would come back for that same ceremony and it'd be like $10. And it's like, why? Well, because I said so. And you can't do anything about it because you can't figure this out and you can't make your life better anyway. It's only me that can help you to do that. So the Buddha knew that this wasn't true. This isn't the way to help people get to a better life. It's through cultivating wisdom. But nonetheless, these Brahmin who were performing these rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship, they were sometimes learning with the Buddha. They would become students of the Buddha and they would kind of learn some moral conduct. And they were kind of teaching not only the rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, but they were teaching a little bit of moral conduct too. So these Brahmin would sometimes come to study with the Buddha. So here the Buddha is talking to the monks. He says, monks, Brahmins and householders are very helpful to you. They provide you with the requisites of robes, alms food, lodging, and medicines in time of sickness. And you monks are very helpful to Brahmins and householders as you teach them the teachings that are good in the beginning, the middle, and the end, with the correct meaning and wording. And you proclaim the spiritual life in its fulfillment and complete purity. Thus, monks, this spiritual life is lived with mutual support for the purpose of crossing the flood and making a complete end of discontentedness. So he's talking about this mutual support where the students are supporting the teachers and the teachers are supporting the students. This is how the Buddha set it up from when he was first alive, and he was teaching for 45 years from the age of 35 to 80. He taught his closest students that if they would really like to be able to study with him, that they could give up their worldly life and come live with him, and he would teach them very closely. And then they would get to enlightenment, and if they liked, they could then share the teachings with other people. And those people who were sharing the teachings, they didn't have jobs and they didn't work outside. They only shared the teachings and they lived based on donations from their students. So all the food, clothing, shelter, medical care, it was all provided by the students. So the teachers were able to live their life and dedicate 100% of their life to sharing the teachings with the students. But then the students receiving this benefit and seeing their life improving more and more and more, they would then share the offerings with the teachers to be able to help them to be able to practice generosity, because by the students practicing generosity is training their mind to let go. So the Buddha put this system in place where everybody's practicing generosity. The teachers are practicing generosity with the students to give and share the teachings without any expectation of anything in return. Everything's available at no cost. And then the students, if they ever choose, they would like to practice generosity with the teachers, they could do that as well. So he created this big melting pot of generosity. And you can see that this is in place even today. If you go out in Thailand in the morning, you'll see the ordained practitioners walking down the street, and people have the opportunity to practice generosity with them. Or if you have a teacher, you can practice generosity with the teacher. And this is an opportunity for individuals to be able to share and practice generosity and for the teachings to continue in the world. Because if I had a job on the side, like if I had a company that I was running and managing and I was relying on this in order to support my family, I wouldn't be able to take the amount of time that I do to be able to share the teachings with students. But by me letting all that go and just fully dedicating my time to share with the students, I'm able to then fully help you with everything and anything that it is that you need. So having the teacher in the world that can share the teachings is very beneficial to the community. So this is the way that the Buddha set it up from his lifetime. Because if you can imagine this mental state of enlightenment where the mind is so utterly peaceful and joyful, if these people were getting to enlightenment and they were the closest students of the Buddha, and they were working and having jobs and careers, they wouldn't necessarily have a motivation to teach. The Buddha set it up so that you can't eat if you don't teach. Right? You can't sustain your life if you're not teaching, because this ensured that the teachings would continue in the world and people would practice generosity. So this is what the Buddha refers to as mutual support, that both groups of people, students and teachers, are supporting each other so that everybody's life is improving together. Right? So this is everything that I have to share with you guys on merit and what the Buddha is teaching here. And you guys can ask any and all questions that you like. But before you might ask any questions, I would like to just share with you guys that if you've practiced any generosity with me over the course of this week or any other time in the future, I would like to just thank you for your generosity and your support. Even if you just come here and you sweep the temple, or you take out the trash, or you do anything to help us to be able to sustain the teachings and share the teachings in the world, I really appreciate your support. And at the same time, know that I never have an expectation that you will ever help me with anything. I'm here sharing these teachings because I know that they work and they're going to lead to your enlightenment if you learn and practice them closely. And I'm interested in seeing as many people as possible to learn and understand those teachings. It's kind of like if you discovered the cure to cancer, what would you do with it? Would you mass market it and make tons of money off of it? Or would you give it away to all these people who are struggling and having difficulties in the world? Well, that's what I'm doing, is I'm giving it away to everybody and anybody who's interested in understanding how to improve the condition of their mind and get to this enlightened mental state. No matter where I teach, whether it's here or anywhere else in the world, it will always be no cost for you to come learn with me. You can get books, videos, podcasts. You can get personal guidance, classes, courses, retreats, anything and anywhere that I go. Even like when I went to Mexico just the last few weeks, or when I'm getting ready to go to California in a few months, those places that have invited me to come teach, they're offering it at no cost. Anybody and everybody can come learn with me. So anytime you see me teaching anywhere, you're always welcome to come learn with me at no cost. I have no expectation of anything from you. And there are people who do support me to a certain degree. And because of that, I can offer my assistance to anybody and everybody. There's people in small remote villages in Africa that live off of like $50 a month. And I'm able to support them and teach them about the teachings of the Buddha. There's people who have written me that live on an island off the coast of Africa, and they say, "Hey, David, I just want to thank you for all your teaching. We don't even have a library on my island, but we have the internet, and I'm able to download your books, and I'm able to learn the teachings of the Buddha, and I'm so appreciative of what you're doing." So it's because of the support that people give me that I'm able to do these kinds of things. So if you support me in any way, even just helping out here at the temple, I just would like to thank you for your support. I really appreciate your interest to help me to help you. That's what I'm doing. Okay, so do you guys have any questions on merit and what merit is? Let me see if we have anything online here. All right, I don't see anything here either. Okay, so what I'm going to do then is move into our next topic, because this is very short, which is continued support on the path to enlightenment. Because now, like I mentioned, we're coming to a close of our course. Between today and tomorrow, we'll kind of be closing things out. So you're going to need more support beyond just this course. And I'm here to help you for as long as you like, or as much as you like. I'm here to share with you. And these are all the different ways that I share. So there's books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, and even quizzes. If you'd like to take a quiz at the end of each of these chapters in the first book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment, a lot of the chapters have quizzes where you can go online and you can kind of confirm your understanding, that you've learned what you need to learn. And there's a few jokes in there waiting for you too, to help you along the way, that kind of try to make it a little bit funny and comical. So if you'd like to do that, you're welcome to do that. I don't look at the results. I don't look at the scores. It emails you and tells you what you've done, but I don't look at that stuff, and nobody else does either. It's just there for you for your own benefit. But you can get books, audiobooks, videos, and podcasts. It's all available at no cost. You can access it from our website. You can download the books for free. You can take them and go print them. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for our printing costs, or you can order them on Amazon. if you have access to Amazon. So those are all ways that you can get access to that stuff. There's in-person and online classes, courses, and retreats. This is an in-person course, but it's also online too. So no matter where you are in the world, you can continue to learn. Even the retreats that I teach, I live stream them from here. And even when I travel, sometimes when I travel, like when I'm in California, they're going to be live streaming that event too. So I have all these in-person and online classes, courses, and retreats that you can get access to. Sometimes from this course, people move into this program. It's called the Group Learning Program. What this is each Sunday at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., I teach here at the temple at 9 a.m. and I live stream it. And then at 9 p.m. I teach it from home and I live stream that. And what this is we go through this first book chapter by chapter by chapter every Sunday. It's a 7-month program. So over the course of 7 months, about an hour and a half each day, each Sunday, we do meditation together, and then I teach from this book. And over a 7-month period, you can gradually work your way through the entire book and develop a really nice foundation for your life practice. We just so happen to be restarting that coming up on October 20th. So if you guys would like to move into that program, whether you come here on Sundays at 9 a.m. or you attend online, the reason why I do it at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. is that no matter what time zone you're in, there should be a live class available to you, right? So say if you're in South America or North America, that's probably going to be Saturday evening and Sunday morning for you. But Sunday morning for the people like in Europe, in the UK, it's a little bit too early for them, right? So they can't attend that one typically. But the Sunday evening one, the people in Europe can actually attend. So by doing it at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., there's kind of this rotating schedule where no matter where you are, what time zone you're in, you should be able to have a live class available to you. And where you can't make the live class, it's all recorded. So you can watch it at your own pace. Because some classes you might attend live, some classes you might not. You might attend by watching the recording. So YouTube, Facebook, and our podcast will have the recording for that particular class. So I do that on Sundays where I go chapter by chapter in the book. And then on Wednesdays in that same program, the group learning program, I teach meditation and then I open up to any and all questions that you guys have, kind of like a free form question. And that's 9 a.m. Wednesday morning and 9 p.m. as well. That's why you guys saw a lot of people here yesterday. They were coming in for the Wednesday morning class, right? And then last night, I was teaching at home as well. I did a class last night at 9 p.m. from home, and there were a bunch of people who attended that and asked a whole lot of questions. So you can slowly but surely learn on Sundays and Wednesdays. That's the group learning program. And we'll go through this entire book in a 7-month period, and it's a rotational schedule that every 7 months I restart it. And you can start anytime you like, but it's kind of nice to start from the beginning, but you can really start it anytime you like. So we're restarting this on October 20th from the very beginning. And if you're in North or South America, that would be Saturday the 19th at 9 p.m. perhaps, depending on what time zone you're in. And then we have this Words of the Buddha, the Pali Canon and English study group. What that is each Saturday at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., I go through volumes 2 through 13. Over a 1.5-year program, I gradually work your way through all those books, volumes 2 through 13. So we do 10 chapters a week. And while 10 chapters sounds a lot of these chapters are like one paragraph or one page. That's it. So it's one discourse from the Buddha. And what we do is we do it as more of a study group versus a traditional style of learning where students will read the chapter in class. It's like a paragraph or one page. Then I will share some teachings on that for like 5 or 10 minutes. And then I open up to whatever questions students have. So I teach it here at 9 a.m. and I live stream it. And I teach it from home at 9 p.m. and I live stream that. So you guys are welcome to attend that. From this program, there's some students who go directly into this program. You could actually do that if you'd like. You don't have to start at the beginning of that program. We're actually in volume 3 right now because we just restarted it in July, but you don't have to start from the beginning. So some students like to go into the group learning program. Some people like to go into the Pali Canon and English study group from this program. Some people actually do both, depending on what amount of time that you have. You might decide to come here on all of those days, Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturday. It's up to you if you'd like to do that, or attend online, or the recordings. Then you can have personal guidance, either in person or online, because the learning in classes is one thing, But then relating it to your day-to-day life is completely different, because you're going to have various challenges that come up in your day-to-day life. So if you're here in Chiang Mai, or say you're in California when I'm there, or Mexico, or any other place that I might be, you can schedule time by just sending me a message and say, hey, David, can we meet up at this smoothie shop? Or, hey, can we meet at this park? Or, hey, can we meet at the temple? Or can we meet at this restaurant? And we can just schedule a time, and I'll meet you wherever you'd like to meet, and we can sit down and talk and have a smoothie or whatever it is that you would like to do. And that's one way to learn in a personal guidance session. The other option is, as you're traveling, you can go on our website and you can schedule online. You'll see an app there, and you can schedule time, and then it'll email you the Zoom link, and then you and I can meet in Zoom. So no matter where you're at, we can talk privately. And a couple sometimes likes to talk together, and sometimes they talk separately, because sometimes there's issues that you have by yourself. Sometimes there's issues that you're trying to work out together, and you might decide you'd like to meet with somebody. So you can do it that way too. So there's this personal guidance that you can receive as well. And that's also available at no cost. Then there's a Facebook group that you can go into, and it's like an online classroom where students ask questions, and I'm the only one who answers the questions. Other people might ask follow-up questions, but nobody else is answering your questions. It's just coming from the teacher. So some people like to go in there and ask questions. Some people like to go in there and read the answers to other people's questions, because you'll learn a lot that way too. So you can essentially get help in 4 different ways. You can ask questions in a class. You can post into the Facebook group, and I'll help you there. You can send me a private message, or you can schedule personal guidance. These are the 4 ways that you can get help. Okay, so this is all continued support where you guys can continue to learn and grow and develop. And everything's accessible from our website. So any questions here? No? Okay. So what I usually like to do at this point is, of course, we're going to get ready to go to lunch here in a few minutes. But what I do at the end of our class is I kind of offer you a gift. Of course, I've been giving you this gift of the teachings, which is the very best gift that I could ever give you. But I have some other gifts to offer you as well, if you'd like. This picture that you see me using of the Buddha that's up here, and it's back there in the back of the room, I have smaller versions of it that are about this big, and I like to give it to you as a gift if you would like it. It's up to you if you'd like to receive it or not. I like to give out the picture of the Buddha for a few reasons. One reason is I think it's very important to humanize a Buddha. That oftentimes when you see statues of him or other pictures of him, they really glorify him, and they have this crown on his head, and he looks very royal. This isn't what the Buddha looked like during his lifetime. When you see these statues, he actually looked like this. He's a human being. This is actually commissioned by a temple down in Bangkok, and there was an artist that looked at the original description of the Buddha, and they drew a picture based on that original description. And this is what he looked like during his lifetime. And I think it's very helpful to humanize a Buddha, so you can see he's a human being just like you. And if he can get to enlightenment, you can get to enlightenment too. So it really humanizes a Buddha and helps you to be able to see that. But at the very least, maybe if you have this picture hanging on your wall and you're talking to your mom and you're getting angry and you're getting ready to say something that you might regret later, you see that picture and you're like, never mind, I'm not going to say that, right? Or maybe it'll remind you to meditate or something like that. So if you'd like some of these, I have them up here. They're actually rolled up, and they just happen to look like a diploma or a certificate. So you might think of it that way too, that we're kind of turning the tassel. So I have those up here for you when you go to lunch, if you're welcome. Or Isabel, I know you're online. You might be here tomorrow. You're more than welcome to get one as well. So I have plenty of those up here. And then also, one of the things that I sometimes do is I end up buying new clothes for myself every 2 years. Students give me money, and then I go buy clothes for myself. It's like $5 for the shirt and $5 for the pants. And when I just came back from Mexico, I had new clothes for myself so that now I can wear these for 2 years. The clothes that I had before, they're still okay, some of them have a little bit of rip or tear, but I've brought those in. If you guys would like a pair of these pants or this shirt, or if you like multiple of these, I have them actually in the room here. They're in a bunch of bags, and I can bring them out, and you guys can have them if you'd like to have a nice comfortable pair of pants or a shirt or something like that. Or if you'd like to give it away to somebody, you're more than welcome to get those as well. So we're going to take lunch break here. It's basically 12 o'clock. So if you guys would like to come back at 1:30, from there, I'm going to teach you how to integrate the teachings into your day-to-day life. And we're going to do something kind of a little special after that. So enjoy your lunch. And if you'd like to come up and get these things, you're more than welcome to. And perhaps I'll see you at 1:30. Okay? Have an enjoyable lunch. We'll see you guys.